All right, so I started the recording. We'll go ahead and open up the call. So welcome everyone to our 5th episode of the SAP Garage. I am your host, Cecily Sorensen. I actually want to start the call today with a bit of great news. So last month we reached the milestone of 1,000 subscribers to the SAP Garage series. So I want to thank everyone for subscribing and for joining our calls. If this is your first time joining the SAP Garage, maybe just a bit of background information on what you can expect today and also in future calls. So in each call, we focus on one SAP Discovery Center mission. We invite on the product experts that helped create the mission. They walk us through the business use case, talk about the benefits of the BTP services that are being leveraged, and then also take us on a hands-on demo of the tutorials and enablement materials that are available to you in the Discovery Center mission project board. So for today's call, I have invited on Milton Rodriguez and Verona. We're going to be talking about SAP Workflow Management. And we're following mission model and approval process for capital expenditures, which I will post just a second in the chat. And we're going to be learning about how you can increase your process visibility, transparency, and also free up some employee time by automating processes. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Milton. If you can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about what you do for SAP, and then also what you're passionate about, either professionally or personally. So Milton, go ahead.
Sure. Thank you very much, Cecily. Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be over here. My name is Milton Rodriguez. I'm from the product management team of SAP Workflow Management. I am also a content specialist, and I engage with partners. And with respect to passions, okay, that's a tricky one. Maybe a cliched one is I love cycling, I love cycles, and also reading and talking. So if you hear me talking a lot, you will understand what I mean by that. Good to have you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Milton. Great to have you as well. And Divya, go ahead, same thing. Introduce yourself about SAP and then also anything you're passionate about.
Okay, thanks, Cecily. Yeah, so I'm Divya. I'm also from the product management team of SAP Workflow Management, and I've been into roles of content development, solution engineering, partner enablement, and been over a year in this domain, and I'm really enjoying my journey in this process automation, tackling some real-time industry use cases that will also a little bit showcase you in this demo. Passionate, I am I not exactly anything, but I like spending time with my family, and that is what I look forward to, a good vacation, a good break from our routine job. So that is something I look forward to.
Great. Thank you so much, and also great to have you here as well. I did forget to mention also in the intro, we will have time for Q&A, so we'll follow that up at the end. So if you have any questions, you can post those in the chat and we'll address them at the end. So Milton, back to you. I'm going to put you back in the hot seat. So tell us about workflow capabilities. So why should people care about them? How are they powerful? And how can people benefit from leveraging them? So go ahead.
Thank you so much for setting that up. It makes it very easier for me to speak in that tone. Okay, so SAP Workflow Management, it's a cloud service offering to digitize your workflows, automate business processes, manage your business decisions, and gain end-to-end insights and process visibility into your business processes. What our product does is it provides an environment where you can model a workflow, model your workflows in a no-code environment, basically. We provide low-code, no-code environment to model your workflows, business rules, business decisions, process visibility, scenario, as well as a dashboard. Right, the central inbox that we have, just give me a moment. Yeah, the central inbox that we have provides a central space for task owners to perform necessary actions on tasks that are assigned to them through the business process. Also, SAP Workflow Management is tightly integrated with SAP Intelligent RPA, that is robotic process automation or bots, and SAP Conversational AI. Let me go through a bigger picture over here. SAP Workflow Management actually integrates seamlessly with SAP as well as non-SAP systems by leveraging the SAP integration suite. And we can converse with them using the REST and OData APIs also, wherein you can invoke services that are running on the backend or any other system that is required for your business process. Also, as mentioned, it integrates tightly. It can leverage SAP Intelligent Robotic Process Automation to manage structured and unstructured business processes or automation projects, right? SAP Workflow Management also publishes its content, workflow content, into the SAP API Business Hub. There's leveraging process experts, business experts, as well as citizen developers to consume the content that we create in a more accelerated fashion. Talking about what we have in line for you today, the mission, which Divya will speak about in a while. We have modeled this particular mission based on the capital expense approvals or CapEx approvals, capital expense request approvals. So what is capital expense? You might know capital investments are an integral part of every enterprise, and they are a part of their business strategies. Capital investments are basically investments towards acquisitions or purchases of new assets. This could include software or services or even business buildings and infrastructures. So what happens basically is a CapEx expenditure involves reviews and decisions across different levels. You need to get the right people because it's a huge amount of money, etc. You need to have approvals, reviews, in a very quick approach also, so that you do not miss out on opportunities, etc. So we modeled this mission based on an actual implementation and actual solution that we had provided to a couple of our customers who generally had an email and paper trail based capital expense approval chalked out for their processes, and they were seeing that the efficiency of their business or the growth of the business was actually getting hampered by that kind of a flow. And they noticed that there is scope for improvement, there's scope to fix broken processes, etc. So something that we generally do with SAP Workflow Management is we make it easier for fixing such types of processes which seem to be non-digitized, because we can digitize workflows, as I mentioned earlier, as well as bring in the right people, the right end users into the play early on itself. So I'd like to actually quickly show you what an end result might look like once you run through the mission. Bear in mind, the mission will have a reduced set of the capabilities, obviously for ease, etc. It will give you a very good hands-on experience on how to use the product. But the CapEx approval, what exactly an end user, the process expert, would be interested in over here, this is something that is unique, that we have visibility or insights into the end-to-end of a business process. So say a CFO or any of the important persona of a company would need to have the metrics or the data on their fingertips. And this particular dashboard, this rich dashboard, dynamic dashboard, which I can just move about, etc., is created with basically no coding involved. You just get handle, or you get the events that you're interested in, and you can model a process, business scenario or a process workspace of this nature, basically by importing or involving the process participants in your business scenario, which will be spoken about in a while. It's a part of the mission also. As you can see over here, this graphical representation, etc., gives a clear picture of how the process is working. Now imagine any kind of a business process other than CapEx, anything between lead to cash, or procure to pay, etc. Something that might span multiple systems, or might be heterogeneous, or might be in a single homogeneous system also. Getting such types of insights is something that brings immense value and immense insights and actions towards these insights bring immense value to you or the customers. For instance, trying to drill down into any of the critical workflows, critical processes, can actually show you the reasons, or what exactly is the reason some of these process instances are blocked, etc. There's more information about this in the mission. As you go through it, you will be further acquainted into seeing what exactly are the reasons for a process to be blocked, where the path exactly shows you where exactly the process is. You'll see how exactly to use these to your benefit and move forward with the business process. Now, this was only one facet of the entire service. This was the visibility part of it. We also have, Control tab. That should help me. Yes, excellent. Okay, so what you see over here on the Fury Launchpad is all the applications that you will get out of the box with the workflow management service, right? You will have productivity tools. I spoke about the central inbox. That is your the My Inbox application where the process owner for a task would come and deal with any of the tasks that are assigned to him or her. Additionally, you have the process workspace, which I just showed you. I started from that point of view because that would be something from a top-down approach. You also have something called process flexibility cockpit. This part is not currently part of the mission. You will learn more about it with the related missions that you can see with modeling CapEx approvals, right? You have development tools over here that will enable you to do tasks such as building a package out of the workflow content, configuring the visibility scenario, and managing the business rules outside, as well as monitoring tools which will allow you to monitor the workflow, etc. Diving in, now, from a capital expense point of view, what would generally happen is that the CapEx request would pick up all the information that is relevant, and it would push it for an approval. When it is pushed for an approval, the My Inbox application over here will get the task from that workflow and provide it to the relevant task owner. There are role-based assignments or recipient-based assignments that can happen over here. So in this case, of course, I have assigned it to myself, and I get the information that, okay, this is the information, this is the investment detail, there's a new product development that happens, and this is the CapEx, operational expenses, and total costs that could be involved, etc. All relevant information can be displayed to me for me to make an informed decision over here. I can either approve, reject, or rework on this task and make it move forward much more smoothly. Imagine the impact over here from a paper-based trail or from an email-based trail where this form of engagement would be missing. That is what is additionally brought in by workflow management. Other than that, while I haven't shown it in the presentation, there are some other things that you would need to know about workflow management. Is that it basically can be used in three ways. It can either be embedded within an application itself. The workflow can be embedded in an application itself, or it can be used to extend any of your line of business applications because it can be invoked by a REST API, or you can create your own standalone UI your standalone workflows and call this through the REST APIs and invoke your end-to-end process. Now, getting back to my presentation. So this is what I wanted to show and discuss about SAP Workflow Management. I will be open to questions on the chat, but in the meanwhile, Divya will take over and show you what exactly the mission does, right? So over to you, Divya.
Yeah, thanks, Milton. And I would take over now. And I've started sharing my screen. So yeah, so hello everyone again. And in the next few minutes, I would be onboarding you on this mission journey with me. So where I'll be running you through the mission contents and the different artifacts. So as Milton has already set the stage for us, we now know what is a CapEx process. So it's any kind of investment a company makes in its in purchasing or procuring or extending the life cycle of its asset. So it could be of any type. So in the scope of this mission, we'll be focusing basically on a two-step approval process, a simple approval process. But the idea towards the end of the mission is to offer you a good hands-on experience on the capabilities of workflow management. So which is clearly outlined in this this mission board, what you see. So this mission board is very well structured. It has all the required artifacts and supporting documents embedded in the cards wherever needed. And it can be executed at self-pace. So it's kind of a self-sufficient mission, which provides you all the necessary information which you can execute and achieve this, sort of gain that hands-on experience. So to start off with, I'll just run you through the structure of this mission. So it basically talks about the setup part, how you would set up your workflow management tenant, and how you will then access all those applications which you just saw in the workflow management launchpad, and following which are the three tracks, which are basically, focusing on the modeling and configuration part of the workflow management capabilities. So how do you model your workflow to automate your flow of work? Then how do you, configure the business rules and automate your decisions and policies? And then how do you gain complete visibility on your running process end to end, and then identify the bottlenecks if there are any? So again, I'll just now go through each of these tracks individually. So to start off with, the very first thing is setting up of your workflow management tenant. So for this, we have this capability of Booster. So Booster is an automated way by which you can, set your entire workflow management tenant. And what does it do is that it will configure the necessary entitlements with the right service plan in your sub account. It will create the necessary service instances. So what do I mean by this? So it will create this service instances, like whatever is needed to access the capabilities of workflow management. It will create the necessary subscriptions to different tools. So Business Application Studio would be the tool that we'll be using for modeling our workflow. Then what you saw was our workflow management. I am just trying to get rid of this header in the top, which is sort of blocking the toggling of, okay. So Cicely, can you just let me know how do I get rid of this bar in the top? It's sort of hindering my toggling of the tabs.
Divya, I suggest you use Control Tab for the time being if you're going from tab to tab. Control Tab should help you on this.
Well, it is not really, but okay. Just let me give a try here. So yeah, so this booster would take care of doing all the necessary setup. So it would be something like when you start the booster, all you need to do is go to your global account, click on the booster and search for workflow management, and then you'll see this tile. So if you click on it, it will start doing the necessary setup. And in the interest of time, I've captured the screenshot. So it will start creating the service quotas. It will create the necessary subscription to your SaaS applications, service instances, destination, and it will create all the required role collections. All right. So once this is through, your workflow management tenant would be set up like in 4 to 6 minutes in an automated way without any manual intervention, and then you are good to go. So once you have set up your workflow management tenant, the next thing what we would do is now we have to set up or model our workflow. So for this, the tool that we suggest here is the Business Application Studio. So as you saw, that Booster will anyways take care of creating the subscription. So once you launch this Business Application Studio, you need to just create the necessary development space with the right kind of extensions and select the right Fury application. So all this is very clearly elaborated in your mission. So where it talks about how do you access this editor, and then you can get started with your tooling. So this Business Application Studio is based on BPMN 2.0, which is Business Process Modeling and Notations 2.0, to standardize, the graphical representation of the workflow. It comes with rich palette of options where you have decision gateways, you have different types of tasks which you can consume in your modeling of the flow of work, or different types of events which you see. So this CapEx approval process, where you see that this is a minimized version of the actual productive use case. But what we are trying to do here is like basically model and automate a two-step approval, where approval is needed from, say, a local manager, and then once it's approved, it's also needed from the central manager to complete the complete approval process. So to start with, your workflow would start with a start event, and you can also associate a sample context, which is like basically a JSON file. So this context is basically the workflow contextual information. So all the workflow related information is stored in this JSON object, and you can add or you can edit or you can append these information in this JSON object. So here what you see that just, for the ease, you'll see that where does it come into picture when we actually, test this workflow or start this workflow. So whatever JSON context that is associated here with the start node, that would be readily available to start our workflow. So to access this contextual information, which is in the form of JSON format, you need a script task. So what does a script task do? It's basically, it involves lightweight JavaScripting with which you can access or modify your contextual information. It can read or write objects from to or from your JSON or the workflow context information. So this is how your this script JavaScript in the script task would look like, and it does not offer you any advanced JavaScript libraries. So, and that is not the purpose either. So it's basically used for any kind of pre or post processing logic you want to bring in or to access the workflow contextual information. And you need to use here $.context. So this is basically a predefined identifier using with you which you can access or modify this workflow context information. So this is what you see is being used here. And then the next thing what you see here is basically, let me just zoom in a little bit, a service task. So when I click on any artifact, you can see the corresponding properties loading in the right pane, which is the properties pane. And with the service task, you can make any kind of, external outbound service call or set up a connectivity with an external system through a destination, right? So, so you can either directly call the service using others options. So that is what is happening here. You see here that there is a business rules REST endpoint which is being called directly, or you also have an option that you can select or you can call a service from API Business Hub. So that is also possible. So here basically we are calling the REST endpoint of the business rules API. So we'll again learn about this capability as well in the next track. So here, what the service task is basically trying to do, that using the business rules, it is trying to determine the approvers, that who would be the approvers who would be approving these CapEx requests. Okay, so since here the service is being called, and then you see here there are possibility of different HTTP methods that are supported here. So in this case, basically a post call is being made, and the payload is being passed as a contextual variable. So based on that payload, some response would be returned, which is again being stored in a contextual variable. So this format, what you see, dollar curly braces context, is basically a dual expression, and to access these contextual variables in these properties pane, you have to use this kind of format, which is basically a dual expression. And you can explore more about this on our help portal, which clearly outlines, in detail how to use these dual expressions. So this is what you are doing in the service task. And one thing that you have to bear in mind, that here only the REST or OData based endpoints are supported. So in case if you have to make a service call which is of type RFC or SOAP, then probably you need to transform them using maybe the integration flow of the integration suite. So the idea is at the workflow side, we should be receiving the REST or OData based endpoints. Then you see something, your XSRF token. So in case if your associated destination is using an authentication type of OAuth 2, then perhaps this XSRF token is optional. You can skip that. But suppose if you're calling any of your APIs or workflow service APIs through some intermediaries, then this protection is lost, and then you might need to fetch the CSRF token as well. Then you have an option here of principal propagation. So what does it mean? So in case if you want to propagate the information of the logged in user throughout the workflow, then you can enable this as well. So this workflow basically supports two types of authentication: OAuth 2 client credentials grant flow, which is of technical type, and then OAuth 2 SAML bearer assertion. So for more or less 80 or 90% of your use cases, this kind of protocol or schemes within OAuth 2 should suffice. Okay, and Then what you see here at the service task level itself, we have this header option where you can add a header parameter, like if you want to pass application content type, if it's JSON or something. So that feature is also available. Then what you see here is a user task. So you see different icons are here. So this so you have that palette of options from which you can drag and drop, and you can bring it here. So we'll see that as well. So here in the user task is basically meant for a user, where a user has to perform some action which the user can access from his My Inbox application, right? What Milton showed us on our standard workflow management launchpad, right? So these, while configuring this user task, you need to provide certain details, which like the priority of the task. You have different options which defines how urgent the task is, and then you can provide a meaningful subject. You can also use a dual expression to access contextual information. Then who would be the recipient of tasks? So it could be either the individual users or the groups. So you can pass that information. You can pass in a comma separated format, or you can pass the single user. So here basically what you see is again a dual expression in the form where we are trying to read data from the context. So what is happening here in the service task, the business rules was being called to determine the approvers, and that information is stored in basically in the context which we are trying to access it via this contextual dual expression, and then we are assigning them as users here. So they will be the final recipients of this user task. Then you also have an option where you can enable the due date, which defines basically like by when the task is due for completion. So what does it mean? Like suppose you can even set the duration as like static value. Say within 2 hours, you can hard code the values of the task creation. The task is due, beyond which it would become an overdue task, right? Or you can also define again here a dual expression in the similar format that I mentioned using this. Suppose if you are storing, or if you are getting that due date being determined from some external service, or you are getting it again as part of the rules response, and you are storing it in some variable. So you can again consume that here and in the form of that expression, and you can configure the duration for that task by when it is due to be completed. Then you can enable the workflow log. You can also enable the forward. You can forward this task by enabling this option. Now to construct this user task interface, we provide you 2 options as part of this workflow service. So you have form and UI5 component. So form is a very rapid way of application development. It is quite friendly and straightforward. It does not require any coding skills. You can insert a section, you can insert fields, you can add a table, you can push data in the table, but then it comes with limited set of features. So if you're doing a rapid prototyping, or just you want to get initial feel, or you're a beginner here, you can definitely try with forms. But in case where you need to develop rich user interfaces, where even you need to read data, say from the back end, and embed an input help, then you have to go with UI5 component for sure, because that kind of capability is not available in the form. So also at the user task level, you can also associate some meaningful custom attributes, and you can again access the contextual information using these expressions. So max of like 15 attributes are supported, which you can add up here. So this is about the user task. And then when you see here that when I click on the on any of the artifacts, I get this quick actions. So the same set of palette options are also available as quick actions. Suppose if you want to send a mail, you can also add a mail task here. So this is what I was trying to tell you. So you can also add a mail task, and this mail task is like, suppose if you want to notify the receivers of the tasks, and you want them to act on the task, and the task is lying in their inbox. So you can definitely send a mail to them that, hey, there is a task waiting on your name in the in your My Inbox application. Can you please access and do the needful? So it's very straightforward here. You need to provide the necessary recipient information who should receive this email, and you can check this invalid recipient in case if there is the email ID is not correct. You can provide a meaningful subject again and construct the mail body either using a plain text or using your HTML skills. So that is also very much possible. In all these fields, you can also again embed dual expressions, which is again possible. So this is more or less about the tasks that you see, the different types of tasks that we have, and they are also used in this modeling of the workflow, CapEx workflow. Now what these diamond symbols that you see, they are like decision gateways. So they are used to model our decisions. So basically we have two types. So like exclusive gateway and parallel gateway. So exclusive gateway is, as the name itself says, that the one, the outgoing branch where the condition is met is the one which is executed. So in this case, as you can see from this gateway, there are 3 branches outgoing, right? So every branch has a condition. So whichever condition is met, that particular sequence flow will be executed. And out of all the outgoing branches, one has to be marked as default. What does it mean? So in case if none of the conditions are met, then the default branch will be executed. Right, so this is about the exclusive gateway. So you are seeing that it is being used at few of the places here. And then another type of gateway is a parallel gateway. So this is something like when you have tasks that can run in parallel and they're independent of each other, then you can probably use parallel gateway to split. And again, to join them, you have to use again parallel gateway. Then what you see here are basically the events. So these are like end events, and precisely they are called as terminate end events. So so basically we have 2 types of end events. So suppose if your workflow is having so many outgoing branches, right? And by any sequence, the flow reaches to any one of the terminate end event. Then what would it do is like it would terminate the execution of your workflow without even caring whether other branches are executed or not. It's like a hard termination of your workflow. But then there's a slight difference if you use this normal end event. So what does it do is like if your again workflow is having many outgoing branches, then end event would be executed, or it will end your workflow only when all your outgoing branches are executed, of course based on the conditions that are satisfied of the sequence flows. So this is more or less how you after you would have modeled your workflow following this track of workflow modeling of the mission, your workflow would look like, which is basically focusing on 2-step approval process from local manager and central manager, right? So once you have modeled your workflow, you have to ensure that your workflow is saved. You can either enable auto save, or you can save all to save all the artifacts, and then you need to build and deploy your workflow. You can just right click on the YAML file and just say build. And once your build is successful, it will generate an empty archive folder on which again you need to right click and deploy it. So this would be your final build and deploy step, which would conclude the modeling of your workflow. And now you want to make sure that, yeah, the model workflow is working fine, or you would like to locally test your workflow. So in that case, okay, it's signed out. I'll just try to get in. So in that case, we also provide you some monitoring tools on our standard Fiori Launchpad. So that will help you to locally test or run your workflow, and you can look at the contextual information. And in case of errors, even you can locally debug your workflow. So this is the monitoring tools that you see here on this tile, and you can search your deployed workflow. So this is a master pane where all the deployed workflows will be available in your tenant. So in this case, our focus is on the CapEx workflow. So I just go and search for CapEx, and I can start a new instance. So if you remember, while modeling the workflow with the start event, we had associated a JSON file with the requester and the investment information. So that is what is being shown here, which is readily available, and we can start the workflow instance. So once you start the workflow instance, you can track your running instance. You can see that it started on so and so date by so and so person. You can see the workflow contextual information, and you can see the execution log from bottom to top. So you can see that now the task is pending for approval by this particular recipient. Sorry, this is the recipient who has received the task. And you can also see the task assignment. Okay, so this task is assigned to so-and-so person. So if this person's access the My Inbox application, she should be able to approve the task. So this is your My Inbox application as part of your workflow management launchpad, which will be available to you once you run your booster, as we just saw in the beginning. So you'll see that once you refresh, your tasks will be available here, which will be waiting for some of your actions here. So this is the form that we just saw to build the user interface, which has all the required information. And then you have these possible options where you can approve, rework, or reject your workflow. So maybe in this case, I just say it's approved, and I click on the approve button. So this will approve. So now this flow of process would keep on moving forward, however you would have modeled your workflow. So this this is a two-step. Now it will go to the next level of approval, which would be a central manager. So this is basically what we have covered in this track of workflow modeling, which basically we started off with how to configure and model your workflow using BPMN editor of Business Application Studio. And then we built and deployed it. And we also tested our workflow using the monitoring tools. Now we'll come to the business rules capability of workflow management. So to access the business rules capability, we have this application again, which is part of the standard workflow management launchpad. So all you need to do is click on manage rule projects and it will launch your central web-based tool. So this basically follows your SAP's, again, enterprise rule model to standardize the modeling notations using DMN 1.1, decision modeling notation 1.1. And this is your central web-based tool with which you can, this provides your central rule authoring and governance of the entire life cycle of your rules project. So right from authoring the rule to, design of your rules project and authoring different artifacts to activation, deployment, versioning, everything you can achieve at this, central using the central web-based tool, where you can model your rule and you can also deploy to different platforms. So that possibility is also there. So, so you can model your rule on the cloud runtime and you can deploy it to SAP HANA, for example, or SAP S/4HANA, or even cloud support is also there now available. So in this way, you can abstract your decision logic from the application code of the business of the other platforms, and thus you can keep their digital core clean and you can model your rule here. And you can, if you need to bring any changes in your decisions, rule or rules or policies, all you need to do is come to this this place and just you can make those changes here. So it provides a lot of agility, flexibility in maintaining your rules, and thus you can keep the digital core clean of your respective platform. So in scope of this mission, we will be focusing on modeling a rule for the cloud runtime itself, which will be our CapEx rule. And so the rule project consists of basically these artifacts that you see. So to start off with are the data objects. So data objects are like, they are the backbones of your rule projects. So based on which the entire rule is constructed. And basically there are three types. You have like structure, element, and table. So for the cloud runtime, basically we'll be focusing on a structure type data objects, or in case if you need to pass input conditions and store array of results, and probably you can also use table as well. So it purely depends on your business use case for which you are modeling your rules project on the data model, and based on which you can model your data objects and choose the respective type. So here for the CapEx, basically we want to determine who are the approvers. So for this, we have modeled two data objects, investment and approvers. And within the data objects, we can need to provide the necessary attributes which will define the data model. So based on that, what would be the input conditions of the investment, like where the type of investment, or the country where the investment is made, or the total cost of investment. So these could be some of the input parameters, for example, that would define this data object of investment. And at the attribute level, you can also define or you can embed an input health. So what does it mean? Basically, we support here two types of value health. One is static and the other one is dynamic. So what you see here as part of this mission, it's value list that is being used. So this is of a static type where you can hard code the values. So your investment type could be of service, or you are making an investment to purchase some equipment, or setting up of a new building space, or machinery, or software. So these could be possible investment types, and you can embed a value help here, or you can also use a dynamic one where you can read values from the backend system by doing some minimal configurations, like setting up of the system and configuring a destination to it. So in the scope of this mission, we are focusing on a static type of value help. So you have model your data objects, you have model your attributes, and you have also defined a value help at the attribute level. Then comes your rule service. So rule service is built on top of these data objects, and where you basically define your vocabulary. So what should be your input? So here the investment data object and its attributes would be the input conditions based on which your approvers will be determined. So that forms your result or the output. So this is what is defined in the rule service. And then comes the rules. So essentially in the business rules capability, we have support for two types of rules. One is the text-based rule and the other is a decision table. The text rule is a very simple if then else kind of a structure, and when you have limited input conditions, you can even go with text rule. And then comes the decision table rule, which is also outlined in this mission. So decision table rule is more like in a spreadsheet format, and you can also export it. You can share it with your business user. So your business user can make the necessary changes in the input conditions and the output conditions, and then you can again import it back in the system. So this is how your decision table will look like, where there are input conditions like what should be the country, and then if the total cost is greater than 100, if the investment type is software, then it requires approval from two levels because both are marked as true, and who should be the recipients or who should be the approvers here. So this is a sample, decision table. And you also need to define here the hit policy. So what does it mean? That in case if it is first match, then the moment your matching record is found, it will not scan through other input conditions, and that matching record would be returned as response. But if there is another option where you can use all match, so if you select all match, then it will scan through all input conditions and all matching records would be returned as response. So you can model this based on your business use case, and you can choose the right hit policy. And these tools also provide you a flexibility or with designing of the rule, where you can also have inline context sensitive help. So if you just do a control space, it will give you a context sensitive help where it will suggest the data objects and then the underlying attributes on that data object. So you can just, with simple click, you can keep selecting those input conditions and you can model your rule. So this is also very much possible. So once you have modeled your rule, so now you need to bundle them together in the rule set. So rule set is a collection of rules and it is uniquely linked to a rule service. So you see that this is a rule set which is linked to a rule service and it has rules within it. So it can have more than one rule also, and that's where this execution policy would come into picture. So now you see it is as orchestration. So just imagine if you have had two rules here. So the output of first rule will go as input to the second rule, and finally the output of the second rule would be the final output return. But there is another execution policy which is aggregation. So in that case, output of all the rules would be returned as an array of aggregated response. So again, depending on your use case, you can choose the right execution policy here. Then you see here there is a priority defined. So where does it come into picture? So your rule service can be linked to more than one rule set. So in that case, this priority comes into picture, and lower the number, higher the priority. So suppose this rule service is linked to another rule set which has priority of say 5. So that particular rule set would be executed first, and then this rule set would be executed. So once you have modeled your rule set, now you're done with the modeling of all your involved artifacts of your business rules project, and you need to make sure they are activated. So you need to set the status to active for each of your artifact, make sure that they are active, and then you just need to go and deploy that particular rules project. So to deploy that, the deployable artifact is a rule service, because rule service is something which binds everything together. Rule service is linked to the rule set is linked to the rules, and rules are built on top of these data objects, right? So this is your deployable artifact, and you have this deploy option. You need to click on deploy, and it will ask for the system, where do you want to deploy? So as I told, that rules also has, this capability that it can be modeled for different platforms. So it could be for SAP S/4HANA or SAP HANA, but in this case, as part of this mission, we are modeling this rule for cloud runtime. So in the beginning of your project also, you would have selected here as system as cloud runtime. So that is what is available here when you choose here the deployment option, and you can deploy your rule in the cloud. So once you have deployed your rule is available for consumption. You can invoke it using the REST endpoint of the rules service. So I would also like to talk on this part that for all your rules, you also have this endpoint where you can invoke the rule service and you can test your rule. So in this case, just to test the rule, so you can come to SAP API Business Hub, and you can just look for the rules execution API, and you can look for this working set part, because this is the one, if you remember, was being called in the in the workflow while modeling the service task. So that was the endpoint that we were invoking. So you have both version part also and the working set part also. So as part of this mission, we have just focused on the working set endpoint of the rules API. So you just need to go and configure your environment and then pass this payload. So this is clearly outlined in your mission. And just what you need to make sure that you have to adapt the rule service ID. So what does it mean? So okay. So the rule that you would have modeled, right? So your rules project here, you have to just get inside that rules project, and you have to just pick up the rule service ID. So the rules project that you would have modeled, as I was showing you, there is a rule service which you need to deploy, right? So that rule service will have an ID which you can just get it. It's like just straightforward. Click on the settings icon and choose this ID option, and you need to just copy this rule service ID, and the same you have to use it in this payload and just replace this with that your modeled rule service. So in this way, you would be testing your rules project which you have modeled just now, and this is your vocabulary which with certain input conditions you are just running this payload, your request, and you can see the response based on your modeled rule conditions. So once you have tested your rule and you are like, okay, yeah, the rule is giving the right response, the next thing that we need to do is just integrate the rule with your workflow. So for this, what you need to do is just get inside the workflow, and you can just in the workflow you have this service task, the script task, if you remember, where you are just preparing the logic to pass it to the service task where the rule is being called. So in that service, in that script task, you need to just replace the rule service ID as well. So what have you done so far? You have modeled your rule project, you have tested your rule project on the API Business Hub, and now that your rule is working fine, you're just integrating the rule with your workflow, right? So here you need to come and just pick up that same rule service ID which we just saw and just replace it, this artifact, the script file, save it, build and deploy it. Then your rule will be integrated with your workflow. And then again, in the similar way, using the monitoring tools, you can just go and then you can execute your workflow to make sure that your rules is coming into picture, it is taking in effect, and it is able to determine the approvers based on your this modeled rule conditions, right? So this is what we are trying to cover here. And then let me just get to the to the mission. All right, so that basically completes the third track of the mission, and then now we will focus on the fourth track, which is on process visibility scenario. So process visibility, basically with which you can gain complete visibility on your use case, how your process is running. So for this, you have this configure visibility scenario, and you need to just click on this configure visibility scenario. You can model your scenario, and you can just create the necessary configurations, like configure the performance indicators. So in the interest of time, I have just kept this visibility scenario ready. So all you need to do is just get inside, and you have different options available here. So you can gain visibility on an observed process, like if you're transforming using some integration flow, some events, you can bring in those here. You can gain visibility on a process template, which is again collection of different individual workflows as process steps.
Sorry, I think somebody went off of mute. Let me.
All right.
You're okay.
No worries. So, and then you can gain visibility on a S4 business workflow, and also on the Qualtrics. So if you are having any sentiments data, feedback data coming from Qualtrics, you can also gain visibility using this process visibility capability. So this process visibility service basically works on eventing mechanism. It listens to the events in a prescribed format, and that's how it generates visibility on those. So in scope of this mission, we'll be focusing on our standalone workflow, which is CapEx that you would have just modeled. You need to select that. So it will bring by default all the events. So some of them are like default events, like what you see, and some of them are like every user task would have a corresponding created and completed event. And then it also brings along the contextual attributes that you would have added to the workflow. Then comes the phases part of it. So phase is like basically it provides you a business user friendly aggregated view on a big process. It's a logical collection of activities, and every phase is marked by a start or an end event, and it has to have minimum one start and one end event. You can also select more. So basically, this process is divided into local manager and central manager approval. And then you have states. So when a process is considered to be completed, when these events are met, when it's ended, when this event is met, you can define the status. So when is a process running critical, when these substatuses are met, and you can also set the threshold value. So based on the threshold value, also you can define the status and substatus. Then comes the attributes. So attributes out of box, this visibility scenario supports or provides a few attributes like default attributes, and a business user can select any attribute, can also give an appropriate name, can adapt the name as per the use case. Then these contextual attributes are coming as part of your process participant that you would have added. And then it also provides phase and step attributes. And then a business user can also add a calculated attribute. So while defining a calculated attribute, you need to mention the role, whether it is a measure or a dimension, and the aggregation type, whether it is for summation or an average, the expression or the events on which that attribute would be based on. And then finally comes the crux of this is the performance indicators. So this is your process performance indicators, which are available out of box. So few of them are available out of box with visibility scenario, and above which a business user can add more visibility indicators, the meaningful ones based on the business use case. So you can also select the representation type of the process indicator, whether it has to be represented as a bar chart, or it has to be a donut chart or a line chart, and so on. You need to, if it is in a particular bar X and Y axis, then you need to define the measure, which parameter has to be defined as a measure, then which has to be used as a dimension. And you can set a filter condition that based on which this particular performance indicator should display the data. So this is absolutely a no coding tool, and it's very business user friendly, and you see only minimal configurations are needed. And then it's once the business user has configured this complete visibility scenario, all he need to do is just save and activate, and he's good to go. So once you have saved and activated your visibility scenario, what you see here is an out-of-box visibility dashboard which gets generated. You can just search for your visibility scenario and click on it, and then you will see all those configured performance indicators being represented here as tiles. So these tiles are very much adjustable. You can just drag and drop them. You can also dive in deeper if you want to gain more information on a particular process instance. And you can again further dive in. You can see the path the process has taken, or the phases that it has completed or skipped, and the path it went through, when was it started, what was the time involved. So all this, kind of insights can be gathered here. So you see that this visibility dashboard gives, complete visibility on your running process. You can track your process end-to-end real time, and also you can identify the bottlenecks, if any, much faster than ever before. So this is what we achieve through this process workspace, and this sort of, I think, completes our mission. And this is what is there in the last track. So the milestone, what you would be achieving towards the end of the mission that I also mentioned in the beginning is a good hands-on experience on the capabilities of workflow management. And it will kind of set up a stepping stone for you. And then you can explore more related missions, which are already tagged here. These are some mature missions built on our real-time industry use cases, which we have already published on our marketplace. And they are tackling some real-time industry, business automation problems, and across different line of business applications. So this one has attachment touch base with ECC. This one has a touch base with S4 system. So yeah, once you are through with this mission and comfortable with workflow management capabilities, these would be the recommended missions that you can explore. So yeah, with this, we come to end of this guided demo on the mission, and I would like to hand it over to Milton.
Thank you, Divya. So quickly, I'll share my screen. Give me a moment. There we go. Okay, so what was spoken about over here was the mission. I mean, Divya gave you a walkthrough of the mission and what it'll make you achieve at the end. You will get a hands-on experience on what SAP Workflow Management can help you do, and you will also see what one type of a use case, that is CapEx, capital expenditure approvals, how exactly this can be resolved by creating a workflow from scratch. Before I open to questions, I would very quickly want to speak about live process content packages also. Basically, we identify such requirements from our customers, and we are able to create accelerants of sorts so that citizen developers or process experts with little or no coding experience can very quickly model the same type of a workflow that you have created in such a way that in a flexible and agile way, such that there is no dependency on any editor tools directly. Rather, whatever has been modeled can be consumed quickly and used. So this is something that is more advanced. It'll be also linked later on in the mission. You can learn more about live process content packages. And if you do have some time, have a look at SAP API Business Hub and discover all or explore most of the content packages that we have already created and published in API Business Hub. As I mentioned, these can be easily consumed in live environments. These are called live processes for that particular reason, that you make a change, it's almost instantaneous and you can activate it and get it working. I have some more links over here, which I have shared for you guys to have a look and learn more about what can be done with SAP Workflow Management, how you can leverage SAP process flexibility, how you can use how you can extend or embed workflow management, etc. So there are some very useful links that I will be sharing over here with you. Right, so I'm open to questions, but before that, I'd like to thank you for your presence over here. And if you do have any doubts after this session or after we complete this, feel free to reach out to us.
Great, thank you very much, Divya and Milton both, and thank you, Milton, for answering those questions in the chat that have already been asked. So we'll give everybody just a minute, and while we wait for any other questions, I just want to thank also from my side everybody for joining today's call. The recording from today and also any of the materials that were presented by Divya and Milton will also be made available on the Garage website, which I have linked in the chat as well. So, see, it doesn't look like there's anything that's come in yet. So are there any particular items, Milton, that you answered in the chat that you think would be interesting to just call out specifically maybe about on-prem versus cloud or anything like that that you want to just call out?
Yes, sure. So I want to address one thing basically over here is when to use cloud platform, when to use business technology platforms, workflow services versus when to use on-premise or when to use the implicit or embedded workflows within the SAP line of business applications also. Workflow management on the cloud basically enables customers to extend processes on the cloud when the line of business applications or the cloud applications, etc., on cloud needs to be changed, right? Or there is a requirement to either extend it, embed it, etc. While this does not mean that you can that this cannot be done using on-premise workflows, it makes more sense from a consumption point of view to use business technology platforms, workflow management on cloud. And the additional part is that the on-cloud workflow services can also consume services that are exposed on-premise using or on the backend system, such as S4 HANA applications on the backend, etc., using integration suite and cloud connector, etc. Moreover, if you want to expose any of your own workflows or applications on-prem, there are guides which are there in our help docs, which I've shared a link to in the chat, or which you can search for easily when you want to consume those, either if it's a workflow or not, if it's feasible or possible. All those will be clearly defined in the guides that we have.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Milton. So I think with that, we can probably go ahead and close the call. So thank you everyone for joining today's SAP Garage. Thank you, Milton and Divya, for your expertise. Our next call is going to be on October 6th. So again, the first Wednesday of every month, and we're going to be talking about SAP Analytics Cloud. So thanks again, everyone, and see you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.